Welcome back. Coming up next, a panel discussion on women leading the way in media.
This is an historic day of leadership and champions of change. And this is our media panel of those that have given their lives and their commitments to driving the support for women's media leadership at its best. So first, to introduce Lisa Nicole Matthews of Associated Press and the president, the 114th president of the National Press Club, but the first to have an all-female board of leadership. Lisa, for you and your Edward Murrow Awards and for all you do to advance women and diversity, we salute you. And as you serve as moderator, we have to note that two names that are historic in our lexicon of media leadership are Judy Woodruff and Nina Totenberg. Judy, what you've done in terms of not only the NewsHour and PBS, but co-chairing and building the foundation for the International Women's Media Foundation, and all you've done to support women. And Nina, to you, as the one we know, the friend of our Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and respected you so for driving women and change and all you've done to be the Supreme Court superstar that we know. You all are legends of change, and we salute you. And with that, Lisa Matthews, moderator, thank you.
Thank you so much, Edie. And thank you for inviting me to be a part of this remarkable two-day summit to celebrate gender equality and diversity for business women. I am especially proud to be with two legendary women pioneers in the media. I want to welcome Judy Woodruff, a broadcast journalist who has worked in network, cable, and public TV since 1976 and is currently anchor and managing editor of PBS NewsHour. And Nina Totenberg, an award-winning legal affairs correspondent who has worked for NPR since 1975. I'm just amazed. It's fantastic to have you ladies here. Both of you have led the way for women in media and continue to do so today. So we're limited in our time, only about 15, 20 minutes. So I'll ask each of you to respond with some short answers so we can cover as many questions as possible. And I'll start with you, Judy. And I'll just say our panel title is Leading the Way for Women in Media. And as I mentioned, Judy, I'll start with you for the first question. And this is a big one, kind of loaded. What are the biggest challenges for women in media today?
Lisa, thank you. And I just have to quickly salute you for your leadership in the media role at the Press Club. And absolutely want to salute my friend and dear colleague in public media, Nina Totenberg, for her extraordinary career. I'm so honored to be here along with you, Nina. The biggest challenges are legion. They have to do with the fast-changing technology. We are all faced with challenges to learn. Literally day by day, the technology landscape is changing, and we have to change along with it. And that involves not just the internet, it's social media, it's every aspect of our business that forces us to think faster, think on our feet, and be there when we have to be there. And the other piece of this is of course, the racial and gender reckoning going on in this country, that this is a moment, women have waited and waited for decades to be given opportunities for promotions, for hiring, to make a difference. And this is the moment for women to push through that door. And if that door isn't open, to knock it down, figuratively speaking, I hope, always. But to say, I'm not going to wait any longer. And for women to support one another as this happens.
Absolutely. Nina, can I get your thoughts on that? Because you weighed in on that pretty significantly in a recent book when you talked about your days, your early days at NPR.
Well, NPR was always a wonderful place for a woman to work because the fact is that it had mainly women correspondents, and the reason was no man would work for that woman. And so it really wasn't until we organized a union and started trying to get salaries that were pretty much co-equal for the same kinds of positions and began to have an institutional way to push that we got better salaries. And today I would say they're decent. You know, they're not network news kinds of, you know, commercial news kind of salaries, but they're decent salaries, and we have every prospect of continuing that way. I want to say how honored I am also to be on this panel with Judy and Lisa. And, you know, when they call you a living legend, you know what that means? That means you're old. So all of the technological things we've had to do in the last year and a half, I don't know about you two, but me, I have had to learn to do things that I didn't think I could do. And I have to say that NPR was extremely helpful in making it possible for me to do those things, giving me a personal person, not a large training room online, to be able to master those techniques that I had to in order to be able to file and to be part of conference calls that were not on Zoom, et cetera, et cetera. I want to say one thing about the future, and that is, and it feeds into the whole question of work-family balance. People like me are used to the idea that you just do what you have to do, because we've been here so long that we go back to a time when if you asked for time off, it really, for any purpose whatsoever, it was deemed a female request, right? So somehow it singled you out, and you never wanted to be singled out that way. But now we face a world in which we have a 24-hour news cycle. We have far more platforms that we have to serve than we ever did before. Not only, when I came to NPR, there was one program, all things considered. It wasn't even as long as it is today. Today, we have 3 major 2-hour programs that are constantly updated. We have digital we file for. We have social media we so-called file for. We have a million other duties that weren't there. So that when I was young at NPR, I covered politics. I covered the White House sometimes. I covered the Congress sometimes. And I covered the Supreme Court. And, oh yes, the intelligence community. I mean, we only had about 10, 12 reporters. You just did everything. You couldn't do that today and be a significant news organization.
Well,
so that's very different.
Yeah, I always say that women are fantastic multitaskers. It's kind of like in us to be multitaskers. I'm wondering if I can hear from both of you how you think women are specifically, how women are leading the way in media, because when I look out, you know, the horizon is still filled with a lot of white men. How are women actually making moves in, and can you point to some folks who we're seeing who are making those changes? And just how strong is diversity within media now, including women?
It's such an important question, Lisa. And I have to say, since I started out, as Edie mentioned, back in the 1970s, when there were very few women, there was one woman at each of the television news organizations in Atlanta where I started out as a reporter. And it was as if there was a quota. We've come such a long way since then. That was all those decades ago. So I'm so proud to say that in public media at PBS, the head of PBS is a woman, Paula Kerger. The head of the Corporation for Public Broadcasting is a woman, Pat Harrison. The head of the station that produces the NewsHour, our producing station, WETA, the public station here in the Washington, D.C. area, Sharon Rockefeller, a woman. The executive producer of the NewsHour, Sarah Just, a woman with decades of experience in broadcast journalism. My colleagues, I'm so proud to say, include individuals like Amna Nawaz, who has a great career coming to us from ABC and NBC and reporting before that. Yamiche Alcindor, who worked in print journalism before she joined television. Lisa Desjardins, the list goes on. And I look around the landscape, the women of NPR, the women who are finally getting their bylines on the front page of the great newspapers of our country. And I speak about it like it's as if it's print, because it still is in part, but of course, so much of it's online, it's in social media, but more and more women are being recognized, women of color, women of every ethnic background, and it can't come, a moment too soon. We are moving in that direction, but it's taken some really terrible moments in our history. The death of George Floyd, in many ways has awakened us as a country again to the need to reflect all of America in our reporting. We can't cover America unless we look like America.
Yeah, you bring up a really important issue about, why it's important that we cover gender and diversity issues. Nina, you want to weigh in on that?
Well, I remember a time when the white men who ran newsrooms, and that was just about everybody in the newsroom, looked around during riots in African-American neighborhoods and realized they had nobody who didn't stand out and who could actually report on what was going on. And that was the first time I remember the light going on in their heads, that you just can't have the same stamp out of an individual and cover the waterfront of what's going on in American society and American government. And
Right.
It has happened over and over and over again. I'm very lucky to work in a place that has always been significantly female. Yes, there were white men at the top, at the very top, the CEOs, but the vice presidents for news for a long time have been women. And the heads, the executive producers of the programs have been women and minority women. Kenya Young was the head of Morning Edition for a long time, and now she's the vice president of I don't know what. And I'm very lucky to work in a place like that, because I remember that for a very long time in my young career, before I went to NPR, I was either the only woman or one of two women who worked in the newsroom at all. I was the only person usually on hard news and at all, and sometimes there was another woman covering something else. So, times have changed, and I think that it's important that we keep going. But I have to tell you that I sometimes wonder about how we do it. Will it redound against us?
Right.
Will it mean that, for example, men don't want to travel with you alone? They don't worry about me, I'm an old broad, but some younger woman, because they are very cautious about how they behave with that person. Mm-hmm. Or will, at NPR, we do something that I think has produced real results, but frankly gives me pause. We actually count the gender and race and ethnicity of the people we're interviewing as a way of measuring how are we doing for outreach. And that gives me pause. It really does.
It's unfortunate we've gotten this far and we're having to do that kind of thing, right?
Right. So we have to think about it and make sure that we don't make mistakes that hurt women.
Right. You keep referencing your young career. So I know we probably have some young people watching this, and young women specifically. I'm wondering if you and Judy might share your top tips for aspiring female journalists. What should they do? What should they not do? And what skills do they need today to be successful in the field of journalism?
Lisa, I'm really all about the basics. I'm a big believer in, if you're going to go into journalism, if you want to be a reporter, to study whatever interests you have in school, to stock up on all the information you can possibly gather, then learn the tricks of the trade, learn the actual hands-on skills that go along with reporting, with editing, certainly with writing. I mean, that writing is essential, whether you're going into television, online, radio, the New York Times. I mean, it all has mushed together now. You have to be able to write. You have to be able to figure out, work with video, audio, lighting. You've got it in editing. I mean, it all comes together. You've got to learn it all, but get the basics down first. And I say this because I think, sometimes we forget as we push ahead to the things we want for the future that we often don't spend enough time talking about the basics. To me, those are the fundamentals, the basics of journalism. But beyond that, don't take no for an answer. If you're a young woman and an opportunity one door doesn't open, I think I said this earlier, be prepared to keep knocking on that door and push that door through if you have to. If you're not finding a receptive audience in your boss at your first job, then look around to see, who is going to listen to you. Make sure your colleagues pay attention to what you're saying. I find our newsroom is much more open today to younger voices, to the newcomers in our newsroom than certainly it was in my early days of journalism, when nobody listened to anybody who hadn't been there 10 or 15 or 20 years. Today, we want to hear from the younger generation, and young women should expect to be listened to. So it is a new time. It doesn't mean that you're not going to meet with resistance. And the last thing quickly that I'll say, Lisa, is don't be discouraged. I mean, there are going to be disappointments. There are going to be failures. It's part of life. Don't let it deter you. Just keep going. If you want to be a journalist, if you're interested in this field or whatever your field is, keep at it.
Right.
I just want to second everything that Judy said. Good writing is probably the most important thing after getting the facts and making sure that they're right. Because you need to tell a story and you need to keep the audience interested. The other thing I would say is that you need to be curious. You don't just be formulaic. Be curious. If there's some little thing in the back of your head and you think, oh, that's probably not what most people want to know, it probably is what most people want to know. At least ask the question and try to get a real answer. And be, as Judy said, persistent. If you have to call somebody at 9 o'clock at night Eastern time because it's only 6 o'clock or midnight because it's 9 o'clock on the West Coast, and that's the only way you're going to find them at home, do it. I mean, I don't care what it happens. You really have to work hard being a journalist. I mean, if any of us learned anything from the 4 years of Donald Trump, it's that you have to work hard. And in his case, the day never ended. I don't know how the White House correspondents did it.
So true. So very true. One final question to Judy and Nina. What would be the headline you would like to write in the future on issues related to women?
Well, mine would be, for the first time in 25 years, a president has named a man to the Supreme Court of the United States.
For me, can I just say that I would like for us to stop caring so much about what the First Lady is wearing in our pool reports and in reporting. I don't know why people care so much about what the First Lady is wearing. How about what the First Lady is saying? So just want to say that. Did you have one, Judy?
If I could say one, it would be for the first time in history, women have been chosen leaders of the top 20 nations in the world. So the world is being run by women. Who knows whether that's going to happen in the near future, but one day.
One day indeed. Okay. So thank you again, Nina and Judy. You both are remarkable women, and we are fortunate you are leading the way for women in the media, and we expect you to continue for the foreseeable future. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.